Baseball, we all know it. You got first base, second base, third base, home plate, and then there's that hole in the ground where the rabbit pops up to deliver the new baseballs. Charlie Finley was a Chicago-based insurance magnate. By 1960, he was well off and ready to purchase a baseball team. After some unsuccessful bids and much negotiating, the most realistic option became the Kansas City Athletics. Team owner Arnold Johnson had died suddenly of a heart attack earlier in 1960, and his widow was looking for a new owner. A local group of businessmen and investors put in a bid, but they were no match for Mr. Finley, whose $2 million bid forced their withdrawal and finally gave him his baseball franchise. The Athletics had moved from Philadelphia only 5 years prior, and the people of Kansas City made their love for baseball known right away. In year one of their KC tenure, they had a higher attendance than any of the 54 seasons that they played in Philadelphia. But by the time Finley inherited this last place team, these numbers were about half as much as they were in 1955, down near the bottom of the league. Losing and low attendance continued throughout Finley's ownership. In total, the A's played in Kansas City from 1955 through 1967. Out of the 8 American League teams during that span, they finished with by far the least amount of wins. Within those 13 seasons, every American League team had at least one season in which they had 4 months with a winning record. Except for the A's, who had 4 winning months over the full 13 seasons. How do you get people to come watch bad baseball? Promotions, gimmicks, crazy ideas, and Mr. Finley was never short on any of those. His first stunt was to solidify Kansas City baseball forever. The best way to do that? Burn the stadium lease, yes! After being home to the Minor League Blues and the Negro League Monarchs, Kansas City Municipal Stadium was rebuilt and expanded for Major League Baseball in 1955. Finley held a press conference to show the world he was committed to Kansas City and Municipal Stadium, and he lit that bad boy on fire. He put $500,000 into stadium renovations, resulting in what he called the sexiest looking park in the country. Mayor H. Roe Bartle jumped on the Finley bandwagon, and Charlie was dubbed the savior of Major League Baseball in Kansas City. Hey, this is going pretty well. Well, it was actually a blank contract, and the whole thing was a publicity stunt. Finley had no intentions of keeping the A's in Kansas City, and within a year of purchasing the team, he was looking at other places where he could move the team to. He made a bid for Louisville, and he met with people in Seattle and Los Angeles. Threatening to move the team was no help in bringing fans to the ballpark. As many gimmicks as he did, he wasn't going to get people on his side. But he tried. During Finley's early tenure, the team received a lot of attention for its uniforms, for which the owner himself selected the design. When he arrived in Kansas City, the Athletics donned white home jerseys with blue and red lettering. Before any drastic modifications, Finley first introduced the sleeveless top to the American League. Sleeveless jerseys were first invented by the Cubs in 1940, but no American League team had adopted the look until the '62 A's. The following year, he shocked baseball traditionalists by dressing his team head to toe in yellow with green trim. Since 1886, a rule existed to ensure consistency in team uniform styles. It stated that the home uniform must be white and the road uniform gray, a color scheme and rule much too basic for Charlie Finley. The Athletics' lone All-Star Game representative in 1963, Norm Seaburn, did not play in the game, reportedly because manager Ralph Hawk thought that the Athletics' uniform was a disgrace to the American League. In 1966, the team added kangaroo white shoes to its ensemble. The color scheme, white shoes included, has lasted almost 60 years. Bright-colored uniforms were then adopted by other teams around the league as Finley paved the path for color, a baby blue boom, and of course, tequila sunrise. Bright uniforms were far from the weirdest thing you'd see if you attended a Kansas City A's game. Just as a bright yellow jersey seems more exciting than a white one, we ask ourselves, what's more fun? Having a ball boy run out and give the umpire more baseballs? Or having a mechanical rabbit magically pop out of the ground to do the same task? Seems pretty obvious. At least to Finley it seemed obvious. Harvey the rabbit would pop out of the ground, spin around, and blink his eyes whilst doing the task. and to add to the allure, the organist would play Here Comes Peter Cottontail. And if that wasn't enough to startle a batter, Little Blowhard could do the job. Little Blowhard was an innovation to blow dirt off of home plate so that the ump didn't have to bend down and use his brush. It was a simple compressed air device whose spout was in the center of the plate. Unlike Harvey, who lasted multiple years, the Little Blowhard experiment faded fast, and the poor umpires had to go back to brushing off the plate themselves. Now, baseball's been around a long time, and most people would recognize a baseball to be white with red laces. But Finley decided that perhaps a white baseball with red laces was not the best option, and he was able to persuade American League officials to use his new orange baseball. The orange balls were used in 2 spring training games before they were no longer seen again. Fans, scouts, and umpires liked the fact that the ball was easier to see, but as a batter it was hard to pick up the spin to differentiate a fastball from a curveball, since there was little contrast between the ball color and the laces color. As persistent as he was, not all of his ideas came to fruition. As much as I wish this happened, his pitcher elevator never was built. The elevator would be under the pitching mound and would lift the relief pitcher entering the game. Forget bullpen carts, elevators are what we need. Let's talk a bit more about animals. Harvey was unique, but animals weren't completely foreign to the A's franchise. Since 1902, the Athletics had been associated with a white elephant and used one as their mascot. Not a real one, of course. Well, Finley decided it was time for a new mascot, and he wanted something original and Missouri-focused. While reading a story about Missouri mules carrying ammunition and material in World War I, Finley had an idea. Luckily for the A's, the other occupant of Municipal Stadium, the NFL's Chiefs, had horse connections. The Chiefs' horse, Warpaint, galloped around the stadium after touchdowns and was housed at a local farm. After receiving the request, the farm found a mule, and Finley fell in love. He fell so hard that he named the animal after himself, and on opening night in 1965, Governor Warren Hern's presented Charlie O as the new mascot of the Kansas City A's. Charlie built Charlie O a pen out in left field where he could be seen. He was brought onto the field at times, ridden by players, and even taken on the road. Most notably to Comiskey Park in Chicago, where Ken Harrelson was bucked off and injured for the 3 following games. Though Charlie the Mule was the official mascot, he was not the only live animal in the stadium. There was a small zoo which included 6 monkeys, named after Finley's father and uncles, 6 China gold pheasants, and a German short-haired pointer. The players were less amused than the fans, and they went as far as feeding grasshoppers to the monkeys. But you see, they first stuffed some pills down the grasshopper's throat, so when the monkeys got that in their system, they'd run around going crazy in their cage. In the grass beyond right center field, sheep adorned with A's branding grazed during games. And this scene was of course complete with a shepherd. Keeping with theme, Finley hosted Farmer's Night, which included a cow milking contest and a greased pig contest. That was way less absurd than another special theme Charlie put on, which was Ernie Mel Appreciation Day. Ernie Mel was the journalist who exposed Finley's relocation efforts, and therefore was Finley's #1 enemy. On August 20, 1961, Finley had billboards with Mel's face driven around the field, and in between games of a doubleheader, he presented the Poison Pen Award to the absent Mel. The broadcasters refused to promote it and said, "I think it was the most despicable thing I've ever seen in my life." Finley eventually remembered he was running a baseball team, and he thought up some ideas revolving around the actual players. On September 8, 1965, the A's hosted Campy Campaneris Night. There have been 5 players who have played all 9 positions in one game. The first player to do it was Bert Campaneris, a super rare and fun feat which ended in Campaneris getting run over while playing catcher and missing 5 games. 2 days later, he signed 59-year-old Satchel Paige. When he was the starting pitcher on September 25, he became the oldest player to play in an MLB game. This actually went well as Page pitched 3 shutout innings before he was able to rest in the rocking chair that Charlie had gotten for the old man. Having a player play all 9 positions in one game and having a 59-year-old pitch for you are not things every team would do. But Finley, in case it's not clear by now, was looking to do the unconventional thing, and he was never to be put off by something as silly as the rules of the game. You see, by 1964, he had determined that the Yankees won every year, not because of their great talent, but because of the dimensions of their ballpark. Most notably the short right field distance of 296 feet. So Charlie decided to make his right field configuration identical to that in Yankee Stadium, moving the wall in 40 feet, effectively putting it 296 feet from home plate. What Finley didn't know, or maybe he did but didn't care, is that there was a rule decreeing a minimum distance of 325 feet down the foul lines, with the exception of ballparks grandfathered in. He wasn't going to just put the wall back where it was. Instead, he kept most of the fence there, but right before the foul line, the fence angled sharply back out so that it was exactly 325 feet away when it reached the foul line. He painted KC Pennant Porch on the wall, and it stood for all of 2 games. When the league told him that all of the fence must be at least 325 feet from home plate. Thus, he moved it back to 325 and redubbed it 1/2 Pennant Porch. Not ready to throw in the towel, he painted a white line on the field that represented the Yankee Stadium dimensions. He then ordered the public address announcer to call out, "That would have been a home run at Yankee Stadium," every time a fly ball landed past the line. Later that year, Finley paid $150,000 to lure the biggest sensation in pop music history to the ballpark. The Beatles were on their first North American tour already when Finley's fee became the largest ever paid for a music concert. I'm sure it was a great show, but this concert was the only one on the tour that was not sold out. By 1968, Charlie was done with Kansas City, and Kansas City was done with him. He moved the team to Oakland, where they won 3 consecutive World Series, and he had a few ideas that changed Major League Baseball forever. Things such as World Series night games, the designated hitter, and an early version of a pitch clock. There were some gimmicks such as the Mustache Gang, and his signing of a track star whose career consisted solely of pinch running, amounting to 31 career steals and 0 career at-bats. Harvey traveled to Oakland, but most of the other gimmicks died after his Kansas City days. With Charlie Finley in charge of the Kansas City A's, the team and games themselves often seemed to be a side note. He controlled nearly every part of the team, from deciding who to draft and sign, to the song list for the organist, to the uniform design. He approved all injuries before a player could be put on the disabled list, and he went through staff at an alarming rate. People got tired of being screamed at, humiliated, and treated worse than animals. He left his mark on Major League Baseball. He provided us with stories we had to double check were true, and he helped show us that baseball may not always be as simple as we know it.
Trailer. There's a permanent in his tail, a new Ford and a chauffeur. He stays in the best hotels. He's living in solid luxury. Charlie O's no fool. He's Kansas City's pride and joy.